Here we are. This is the week that we've been all waiting for. I don't think anyone's actually been waiting for this week, but this is a pretty big week. Really, just to kind of go straight into it, like let's just kind of go over the highlights. Oh, whoops, hold on, wrong button. Let's go over the highlights real quick with you guys. This week, we start this week off with Mars ingressing into Capricorn. In my opinion, this is a big shift in the energy with Mars going into a sign, activating all of that Capricorn stuff in a much more Martian way. It's going to be really loud and in your face. Now, I just recorded a podcast where I pretty much talk all about Mars and Capricorn. It should be coming out tomorrow on Monday when Mars goes into Capricorn. So make sure you guys watch that if you want to know all of my feelings and thoughts about the Mars and Capricorn transit with Venus. But we are going to talk about it in this horoscope. But anyway, I just wanted to say, kind of go, like, there's a lot to talk about with Mars and Capricorn. But Mars ingresses into Capricorn starting Monday. So, like, I mean, we wake up Monday morning and things already hit the fan. Then Tuesday is going to be super crazy because we have a ton of lunar transits and Mercury will retrograde back into Capricorn, which, again, just shifts the whole tune of the week. And then as we kind of continue on throughout the week, Mercury is going to go back over Pluto for the second time. And there's one more Passover of Pluto later on, I think in February. And then Venus stations direct at the end of this week. By the time we get to Saturday, I mean, we're already done with the Venus retrograde. And now that Venus is done retrograding and she starts to move direct, this time she has Mars there. And again, just the tune really, really changes this week. Last week we had that full moon in Capricorn. We had the Mercury Cazimi. There was a lot, or not the full moon in Capricorn, the full moon in Cancer, right? There was kind of a realization of what we needed. And now it's time to actually pretty much do the work. To kind of jump right into it, as we start Monday off, again, Mars ingresses into Capricorn. But I think what's even more telling is as Mars ingresses into Capricorn, that's kind of the only thing we have going on all day until later on in the evening. That's when the moon is going to ingress into Scorpio and make a square to Mercury. Monday's a pretty hardcore day, I'm not going to lie. It's why I wore my big dog shirt today. This is only for the big dogs this week. But let's talk about Mars ingressing into Capricorn. Like I said, on Monday, I'll be releasing a new episode of the Delineation where I talk about this a little bit more in depth. But here's the thing. Mars is all about fights, conflicts, separation, inflammation, cutting, competition, war, anger. Now, that's all bad, right? I would challenge you to look at this through a, how do I want to put this? For example, a tool can be a weapon at any time, depending on how you use it, right? Or a tool can be a life-saving tool, depending, of course, on how you use it. With Mars going into Capricorn, Mars is, oftentimes I like to look at it as a tool because Mars rules blades, Mars rules, it's all about cutting, it's all about changing things. And I think as Mars is going into its sign of exaltation, the sign where it is doing really well, it performs better here. This is going to be a time where we really lean into the Mars energy, right? I want you guys to kind of let's just look at Monday real quick. Let's look at all the planets. Sure, Jupiter's in Pisces where that's really positive, but literally everything is in a Saturn-ruled sign. This is pretty serious. And I think Mars going into Capricorn, again, really shifts that tune. But Mars going into Capricorn, Mars is about energy, drive, action, initiation, competition. Yes, it's about fights. Yes, it's about conflicts. But depending on how you use that energy is whether it's pretty much going to make the basis of whether or not it's positive or not. I think the negatives of Mars in Capricorn is it is going to feel exhausting. Capricorn is all about systems, rules, regulations. And Mars in Capricorn is just about applying the system. Mars in Capricorn is I talk a little bit about this in the delineation, but it's really about discipline, right? If you have a certain routine or a certain plan that you know is going to work, and if you stick to that plan, you'll get the results that you're looking for. That's the MO of Mars in Capricorn, right? Mars in Capricorn is not afraid to do the work. Mars in Capricorn is not afraid to do what it takes to pretty much do what it takes, I think is a good way to look at it. I talk a lot about in this episode of the delineation about earning something. And Mars in Capricorn is it takes time to achieve something. It takes time to win a battle. It takes time. And, when we talk about those Saturn ruled signs, that Capricorn and Aquarius, it's going to rule things like time. It's going to rule things like longevity. It's going to rule things like, like Saturn literally is Chronos, time. And I just think as Mars is in Capricorn, you have to put in the work, you have to put in the energy, you have to put in the effort in order to receive the rewards that you want. But I think also while Mars is in Capricorn, that's the challenge. But that's also where the growth comes in. Like, Mars in Sagittarius was fun. We got to dream, we got to believe, we got to, see, Mars in Sagittarius is very fueled by hope, which has its positives, right? Also has its negatives. Mars is a malefic planet. But as Mars goes into Capricorn, it's just like, this is where things get very real. This is where, again, you kind of just have to stick to the plan. So, sometimes, in life, you have a good day and you have bad days, right? And I wouldn't necessarily say that this is a bad day, but how do you get through a bad day? You just kind of work through it. You don't overreact. You don't let yourself get overwhelmed. You try to just keep things as according to plan and keep things as stable as possible. And I think that's what Mars in Capricorn is trying to do. Mars in Capricorn, though, is really putting in the effort and the energy. Mars in Capricorn is really applying strict discipline. Mars in Capricorn is also, though, where the problems are going to show up. Like, we've had Venus retrograding in Capricorn. We've had that value shift. Mercury's going to go back into Capricorn, where our mind's going to be more focused on that. But Mars in Capricorn is where the wrecking ball comes into play, right? Again, this is where the challenges come. I talked a lot about this delineation episode of like, when you make a transition, when you make a switch, those first 2 or 3 weeks might be fun and exciting, but then when things get hard, what do you do? When things get hard, do you rise up to that challenge? And I just think that's this Mars in Capricorn thing, right? I mean, this is also, in my opinion, the big wrecking ball of everything that's been going on since 2018, when Saturn first entered Capricorn. Because in 2018, we had Saturn enter Capricorn. Then early in 2020, we had Saturn conjoining Pluto in Capricorn. We had Jupiter go through Capricorn. Then we had this Venus retrograde in Capricorn. Now we're going to have Mars come through here and finish the job. Mars hasn't been in Capricorn since early 2020. This was I believe December of 2019 or January, February of 2020. I can't actually remember right now off the top of my head. I think it was February 2020, right before lockdown went into play. So it's been a while since we've had a Mars transit here, but I just think the stakes are different at this point. And the other thing is Mars is in Capricorn, and we start the week off with some real serious energy and real like, hey, it's not necessarily do or die, but like, get real. Like if you're, if you're in the middle of work and you've got a 40-hour week, 50-hour week, and you've got, I don't know, something going on in your head, it's just easier to work through your problems if you're just working and you're keeping yourself focused. Something I've said a lot on this channel is like idle hands are the devil's workshop, which God, is that the most truest statement. If you can get yourself focused on something, if you can put your energy to good use, which that's that Mars in Capricorn, like have a system, have a routine, have a plan, apply that plan. And, I think you'll be able to not only do more, however, not necessarily, I think you'll be able to handle the stress better. I think you'll be able to handle, aggression and anger or frustrations, because that's what Mars in Capricorn is doing. Like the more you have healthier outlets for that Mars stuff, the more you can handle it better. But then that's how we start the day, right? So like Monday is just going to be a pretty raw and real day. And that only continues as we go into the late evening on Monday. Really, it's when we get to like at nighttime. So for a lot of you, you're not really going to see this until Tuesday, but the moon's going to go into Scorpio. And yes, it'll make a sextile to Mars, which is motivating, but it also makes this square to Mercury, where Mercury is still retrograding in Aquarius at this moment. We're still re-examining and re-looking at all of this Aquarius stuff of society and technology and, I like ideals and all that stuff, right? As the moon goes into Scorpio, there is this sinking feeling, though. What I am very excited to talk to you guys about, well, actually, that kind of just leads us to Tuesday. Let's kind of just go into it. Well, technically, it doesn't actually lead us to Tuesday, but whoops, wrong button. There we go. What I want to talk about eventually here, what I'm personally excited about is the moon conjoining the South Node in Scorpio, because as we get through Tuesday, we'll have Tuesday to go through. But as we get to Wednesday, the moon's going to conjoin the South Node in Scorpio for the first time at like 29 degrees, which is kind of like, that's going to be really interesting. But anyway, we get into Tuesday. And what's so interesting about this moon in Scorpio transit, right, is again, I think the tune really changes as Mars goes into Capricorn, and then immediately following with the moon going into Scorpio, that's kind of doubling down on that energy. But here's the thing, on Tuesday, after the moon ingresses into Scorpio, sextiles Mars, squares Mercury on Monday night, going into Tuesday, the moon will make a trine to Jupiter and square the sun at the same time. Then it will go opposite Uranus and then sextile Venus, and then it will square Saturn, all as Mercury goes back into Capricorn. So I've said this before a few times about how like it takes lunar transits oftentimes to bring things down to earth, right? And I've also talked about like just days where it's just lunar transits like this. It's kind of like being thrown in a pinball machine. You're just kind of going everywhere. And that's really what Tuesday looks like. I think, again, the tune changes so much with Mars going into Capricorn, but let's just kind of go over all the lunar transits on Tuesday. Moon's in Scorpio. Our emotions, our feelings, they're volatile. They're very sensitive. It could be even hurt. But with the South Node now in Scorpio, it's just this is new for all of us. So I would really just examine how you feel during this Moon in Scorpio transit, because that's going to give you a better idea of what these eclipses are going to be like for you, what the South Node transiting Scorpio is going to be like for you. So just kind of tune in. But as the moon trines Jupiter and squares the sun, this kind of cracks me up, because the moon, our emotions, right, squaring the sun is kind of like how we feel is kind of going against our energy and our ego and how we want things to be. So there's this kind of internal conflict. But the moon's also trining Jupiter, where there is this sense of hope. There is this sense of seeing a bigger picture. There is this sense of looking at things through the glass half full. So it's a weird combo, right? So I just think as we kind of go into the morning of Tuesday, there is this kind of sense of how do I, with the moon squaring the sun, you might have to look at things through a different perspective. But as the moon's trining Jupiter, we're supposed to be looking at a bigger picture here. We're supposed to be going, okay, like what is possible? What is, the more, I don't want to even say idealistic side, but where are you going to apply your faith? Where are you going to apply your hope to? What are you going to seek out in order to make things make more sense, right? As we go through the day, the moon will then go opposite Uranus and sextile Venus. So kind of interesting here, because that moon going opposite Uranus is, I think with the moon in Scorpio, I say everything's a two-way street because it is. But the moon in Scorpio is like, I think if you're like really, really trying to hold on to something, as it goes opposite Uranus and Taurus, you could slip things up. I think with the moon in Scorpio, I think it's really easy to like have our emotions fixated, right? Like we're upset, we're hurt, we're cranky. And I think as that moon goes opposite Uranus, just because you're upset, that doesn't mean you have to fuck everything up, right? Like don't self-sabotage, don't, destabilize everything because in that moment you're upset. But also this moon in Scorpio is very like really getting clear on how you feel. And what's interesting is this is sextiling Venus in Capricorn. And Venus is still kind of trining Uranus, but that isn't actually, they never actually end up trining exactly. So there's nothing really to talk about there. But the moon going opposite Uranus, then sextiling Venus is kind of like that shakeup occurs, that destabilization of that. Don't know why I couldn't say that. That happens, right? This kind of shakeup, this insecurity feeling occurs. And the moon sextiles Venus in Capricorn. This is a reminder that your values are shifting. This is a reminder. This is that moon in Scorpio, like opposite Uranus and Taurus. Like this is kind of like that check-in of like, things are different. You are changing. Again, what has this Venus in Capricorn or Venus retrograde been for you? Where have you been shifting how you relate? How you've been shifting how you work the system? How have you been shifting, again, what you value and how you apply that value? And I think this moon in Scorpio opposite Uranus is kind of a little test of that. You know what I mean? Like, are you about your word? Are you about this? And I think this moon in Scorpio sextiling Venus in Capricorn is kind of going like, yeah, I'm a little sick of this. I'm a little like, this isn't the right choice for me. It is going to be kind of stingy. It is going to feel very weird. But the problem is as we kind of go through the day, after the moon makes that sextile to Venus, it makes this square to Saturn, where I feel like the moon going opposite Uranus, and like things are just very uncertain and shaky. And then it sextiles Venus in Capricorn, where you go, fuck, yes, this is all changing. But then the moon square Saturn, where there's this, it's not just, it's super easy to, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say accept something. Well, there's a difference between knowing what has to occur and doing the work that you have to do, right? It's like when like if you own like your home and you've got something that you know that you need to do, but like it's really uncomfortable, you really don't want to do it. And that moon in Scorpio squaring Saturn in Aquarius, like these are fixed signs, right? There's this immovability with things. Saturn in Aquarius is like, this is the law of the land. Saturn rules authorities, Saturn rules barriers, walls, boundaries, and this moon in Scorpio squaring Saturn in Aquarius is very like, damned if you do, damned if you don't. You're either stuck on the inside or outcasted on the outside. And I just think this moon in Scorpio is you're just gonna feel like you're hitting a wall and that there is no forward movement, right? Moon in Scorpio is squaring Saturn in Aquarius. Moon in Scorpio is like your feelings are hurt, you're upset. There's this emotional volatility. And Saturn in Aquarius is like, well, that's too damn bad, pretty much. Like get the fuck over it, which isn't really like fun or great, but I just think later on Tuesday evening, you're probably going to feel like, well, I can just imagine with Mars being in Capricorn and this moon in Scorpio squaring Saturn in Aquarius is like, sometimes you can't force everything. And sometimes there is this kind of like, I feel like you might be trying much harder than you need to with the moon in Scorpio squaring Saturn in Aquarius, and this Mars in Capricorn is like, you're really motivated, you really want to go, but there's this, it just seems like it's going to take you a second to get over it, if that makes sense. I think with the moon in Scorpio, it's very easy for emotions to be volatile. And if you hold on to I think it's really easy to hold on to pain. I think it's really easy to hold on to hurt with that moon in Scorpio. And I think as it's just squaring Saturn, it's just hard. Like, you know what I mean? It's not easy to do uncomfortable things or challenge authorities or like moon in Scorpio, even in the superior position here, squaring Saturn in Aquarius is very like, again, emotional discomfort, challenging, the authority, challenging the way things are done. But this doesn't look necessarily like anything's going fast. I would just say try to get your emotions together on Tuesday. Because also at the same time, Mercury goes back into Capricorn. So let's kind of rewind here. Mercury goes back into Capricorn later on in the evening. And that's a really big deal, right? Mercury's been in Aquarius where it's been kind of out there. And again, there's this mental gymnastics, and then Mercury squared Uranus. So nothing worked. And Mercury's going to go back into Capricorn where, again, I want you to think about the last days of 2021 and the first few days of 2022 when Mercury first ingressed into Aquarius. Right before then, what was your mind on? What were you thinking about? The difference between Mercury and Capricorn and Mercury and Aquarius is Capricorn is like the system, the plan, like simple, like it's very simple, versus Aquarius is very dynamic. Aquarius is very like technology based, right? The Aquarius is very like, I said mental gymnastics last week for a reason, because Aquarius is much more of like an idea versus Capricorn is much more like a plan. And as Mercury goes back into Capricorn, there's this kind of focus on, revisiting the logistics, revisiting the plan and the order of operation. I think with Mars and Capricorn here, Venus is pretty much, by the way, Venus is pretty much motionless this whole week, which is also a really big deal, right? Venus takes a while to station direct, but as she's really not moving, there is that kind of pivot, a very slow pivot, nothing really happens overnight, towards, hey, like now that Venus is retrograde, we had that kind of, okay, our value shift. And now as Venus slowly starts to station direct, there's this sense of like, things are different now. Like, if you have, like, again, value changes are just so interesting to me. But I think as Venus is in Capricorn, there is the sense of understanding the rules, understanding how things are going to be applied now that things have kind of changed a little bit. But as Mars is in Capricorn, there's more challenges. With Mars in Capricorn, there's more work to do. And as Mercury goes back into Capricorn, there's this kind of like, not necessarily back to the drawing board, but kind of like, okay, like, this isn't things did not go according to plan. And now let's kind of refix everything. I think as Mercury goes back over Pluto, though, again, that stuff about fear, that stuff about overthinking it, the power stuff, that's all going to come back up again. But we're going to talk about that as Mercury, because Mercury will hit Pluto later. But that's Tuesday. Tuesday is a hell of a day. I'm 20 minutes into this and we're only talking about Tuesday. A lot of lunar transits on Tuesday. But that brings us to Wednesday. And on Wednesday, Moon's going to try Neptune all day long before it makes that conjunction to the South Node for the first time later on in the evening. So, let's do this. Moon and Scorpio trining Neptune. Boy, I think that it's different with the South Node there, because the South Node's in Scorpio, man. Like, there is this, like, the pain, the resentment, the revenge. It's fucking exhausting now, right? It's the North Node's in Taurus, man. Like, what the fuck do we have to do to get peace, to get stability, to get growth, to get harmony? That South Node in Scorpio is like, there are certain things that you have to do, and sometimes that stuff hurts. That Moon in Scorpio, I think trining Neptune in Pisces is definitely going to be like, try not to overimagine things. Try not to have high expectations. I think it's the Moon's in Scorpio. And again, we're hurt. Like, that's the Moon in Scorpio. There's this sense of like, our feelings are very present in things, and it's immovable, right? As the Moon trines Neptune, this can be over romanticizing the pain. And when I say over romanticizing, this is kind of like, when your ego's really attached to everything and you make everything about you, or for example, Neptune, making things out to be worse than they might seem, or worse than they are, just because your emotions are much more invested. So I think this is going to be a really big check-in. I think some of you guys are going to be really kind of gassed up. Moon and Scorpio trying Neptune, making all types of stories up as to why things are the way that they are, and what you do get, what you don't get. It's just, I think the Moon and trine Neptune is, I think this is a better day to not get lost in the story and the imagination of the hurt and the pain, but to really go, okay, as the Moon trines Neptune, it's like, let's look at this through a much more easier to understand picture. Let's kind of decipher how we can romanticize this, how we can look at this through a better lens, and how we can look at this through a worse lens, right? Let's be realistic. But as the Moon later on throughout the evening on Wednesday starts to conjoin that South Node, like, if you decide to be hurt all day long on Wednesday, boy, you're going to get a really good night's rest, because that Moon in Scorpio on the South Node is like, you're going to be exhausted. It's like, have you ever seen like a kid get all upset and then like they're like upset for like an hour, then they fucking pass out and take a nap? That's like this Moon in Scorpio trining Neptune. Like, there's heightened sensitivity, heightened emotions. Moon's trining Neptune. It's like you're, kind of lost in it. But as that Moon goes over the South Node, it's kind of like, I don't want to just say suck it up, because, it's a little bit more than that. I think it's just this kind of like, yep, this is, again, when you want to plant a orchard or when you want to grow crops, your hands are going to touch cow shit. You are going to get dirty. Same thing if you're like raising a kid. Like, kids are fucking filthy and gross. And that's the South Node in Scorpio. It's like, if you want things to grow, there is dirty work you got to do. And that Moon in Scorpio on the South Node is our first, it's like that our first day on the job. And you go, yep, this is like, for example, I remember one of my first jobs. I say one of my first jobs. It was like my sixth job. I was a dog bather. And I don't know if you guys know this for dog bathing, but you have to, what is it fucking called? Release the anal glands. That's what you have to do. I didn't know that was a part of the job until like my first day. And I was like, I guess I got to squeeze dogs' buttholes to get shit out of them, to get them clean. Okay. And that was weird the first day, and then you kind of get over it because, it's a job to do. But that's like, I feel like the best analogy or the best, story I could give you for the Moon conjoining the South Node in Scorpio. It's just a part of the fucking job. There's dirty things in life. There's hardcore things in life. But that South Node in Scorpio is like, man, get the fuck over it. Like, just fucking do it. You know what I mean? I mean, everything's in Capricorn. The Moon's going to be sextiling Mercury. Like, you got to do what you got to do. Sometimes, again, you got to get dirty. But that's Wednesday. Let's go to Thursday. Now, what's super cool about Thursday, and there's no highlight, but I'm so excited on Thursdays. The moon's going to go into Sagittarius for the first time without the South Node. Okay, hold on. Before I lose my mind about this, the South Node is a drain and it's exhausting and you got to let go of it. And it's this whole problem, right? When you have the South Node go through Sagittarius, where you're talking about what typically expands, what typically grows bigger, what typically is more hopeful or more exciting, and you have the South Node go through there, it's like the excitement, the hope, the vision, it all goes away. And so now with the moon going into Sag, there's this way bigger sense of freedom. Sure, the South Node's in Scorpio, that's not always fun, but as the moon goes into Sagittarius, fuck, is that going to feel like a release for the first time in a really long time. We go into, and the moon ingresses into Sagittarius first thing Thursday morning. And I really think there is this sense of freedom that we go into. There is this sense of moving on. There's this sense of, God, it's like moon conjoining Scorpio. It's like, okay, let's say you have your first day at the job and you're doing something, you're like, fuck, I didn't know how to do this. And then it's like, you get out of there. And that moon in Sag is like, fuck, I'm so glad I'm out of that room. I'm so glad I'm out. But the moon makes this square to Jupiter. I don't know how I feel about this yet, simply because this is our first lunar transit in Sag without the South Node. And so while I think there is this big sense of freedom and relief as it squares Jupiter, I feel like the moon in Sag is like, any Sag placement really is like, where's my target? What's point B? I am at point A. Where's my point B? Where's my target? But I think as the moon squares Jupiter and Jupiter's in Pisces, it's kind of like, well, there is no target. There is really, it's much more about what are you doing in this moment? How do you feel about here? And I feel like this moon in Sag is at first will feel like the sweet escape, but then there's really no running. There's no, the freedom is within, right? Freedom is a feeling that you have in your heart, right? It's not necessarily a journey all of the time. It's something that's created moment to moment, depending on, you, of course. But I think this moon squaring Jupiter is really trying to understand where to find freedom, where to find the next point. And I just think as it squares Jupiter and Pisces, as much as you might want to go to the point B, there's something about right here in this moment. There's something about right here in the space that requires you to tune in, check in. Moon and Sag, it's so easy to avoid and tune out and check out. Which again, there's good and bad parts to that. But I think as the moon squares Jupiter, it's you trying to just be very specific and really all over the place, just relax. I think a little bit on Thursday, know that you're feeling better. But I feel like you might feel antsy, like you want to escape, like you want to go somewhere. But there's really no hiding at this point. I think is a good way to look at it. Moon will go into Sagittarius square Jupiter. And as we go out through the day and as we go later on to the evening, really late into the evening, pretty much going into Friday, the moon will make that sextile to Saturn, where pretty much it's kind of like, all right, we're not going anywhere right now. So what can I do here in this moment? Moon and Sag squaring Jupiter and Pisces is kind of like, you can dream about what is next and what is possible, but here you are. And I think this moon sextiling Saturn is like, you got to adventure. You do have to go on your own way. You can go your own way. That Fleetwood Mac song. I just think as the moon sextiling Sagittarius squaring Saturn Aquarius, it's kind of like you're not afraid to look at things from a different perspective. I think Saturn Aquarius is, again, there is this feeling of either being trapped inside the walls or having to be outcasted on the outside. And that moon in Sag sextiling Saturn Aquarius is kind of like being able to see the bigger picture on both ends, right? But I think for a lot of people, it's going to be kind of like, hey, getting a little curious, wanting to see the bigger picture, wanting to say, okay, now that the South Node's not in Sagittarius and this topic of, beliefs and philosophies and it isn't so draining anymore, maybe we can actually start looking at things through a bigger perspective, through a macrocosmic perspective, right? So Thursday, it's you're going to feel challenged. It's going to feel a little limiting, but it's, the moon will end up sextiling Saturn. So it's constructive, not horrible. But then we get into Friday and, where are we going? Yeah, moon's going to make a square to Neptune. So part of me likes that for like partying on a Friday. Other part of me doesn't. And also because Mercury's going to be retrograde now over Pluto for that second time. So moon and Sag squaring Neptune and Pisces is very, I think it's hard to dream about something that you just don't know about. I think it's really easy to speculate about things when you are only given so much information, right? Like, for example, like Neptune and Pisces it's easy to spin any story when you're only covering one perspective of it, right? That's true for the news. That's true for astrology and astrologers. And I just think as this moon in Sagittarius is squaring Neptune and Pisces, there's this sense of expectations are just premeditated judgments, right? And I feel like there's this sense of, what you thought was supposed to be grandiose and supposed to look a certain way doesn't. That moon in Sag is, this isn't the way I used to go. This isn't where I thought we were going. This isn't where, again, there's a lot of this. And this is why I brought this up in a couple weekly horoscopes ago of like when Mars was in Sag squaring Neptune, it's like, where are we going? And I think this moon, now that the South Node's not there and the moon is in Sagittarius here, squaring Neptune, the moon is our emotions and how we feel and what we're connected to on a day-to-day level. And that moon in Sag is very explorative. It's very fun. It's very jovial. But as it squares Neptune, there is this sense of, if you just want to take a road trip just to fucking leave, that's fine. Do that. But at some point, you got to figure out where you're going. At some point, you have to get much more clear. Like, for example, if you're in a new city, if you take a road trip and you're in a new city and there's traffic and there's construction, it's like, well, now you got, you can't just wing it. You're going to get lost at some point. I think this is a really good day with the moon and Sag squaring Neptune and Pisces to really question like, hey, where are you going? Is this what you expected? And also, I think this is a great day to really challenge your ideals, challenge your expectations and say, okay, when you, for example, like when you look at, it's so funny. I saw this thing about how in LA they have all of the trains getting robbed right now. And everyone's like, look how much trash there is there. I'm like, man, people have only really seen good pictures of Los Angeles because it looks like that everywhere pretty much. And the moon and Sag squaring Neptune is like, if you've never been to California, wow, you probably think it's heaven on earth. And then you get there and you're like, whoa, I mean, like, it's cool, but you're like, there's a lot of things that they don't show you. And, and that's it's not necessarily about like what's truth and what's a lie, but certain things, well, like we've all been, for anyone who is single or dating, who's anywhere between 20 and 30, we've all been catfished before on people online. And it's not necessarily like that they changed the way that they look, but it was just the right angle. And that's what Neptune does. It distorts our perceptions of things. And this moon in Sag is maybe we're like, oh man, this person's so hot. Can't wait to get, and then they're a catfish. And then maybe it's not horrible, like they're like super ugly, but you do go, wow, I should really change my expectations next time. That's Friday. Also though, Mercury's going to be, as we have that moon square Neptune of kind of like, okay, yeah, let's not be too idealistic here. Let's get a little clarity. Mercury's going to go back over Pluto, where again, Mercury's our mind, the way that we think, the way that we speak, the way that we communicate. Mercury's retrograde in Capricorn, revising the plan, revising the structure, but it's going to be on top of Pluto. This is kind of like a, oh shit moment. Like it's again, everything's a two-way street. For some people, this is going to be like a, oh my God, what am I doing? Like, I just think it's going to be it's going to, when you fail at something, it is really easy to beat yourself up. Well, maybe you're a lucky person and you don't beat yourself up. If you're like me and you fail at something, it's super easy to pull out the hammer and just fucking stupid. Like Mercury on top of Pluto is like really thinking the worst out of a situation, which has its benefits, right? There are things that need to be taken seriously. Pluto is, again, governments, corporations. So I think we're going to be hearing something about that. Maybe this is a reversal of a lot of stuff, to be honest with you. Wouldn't surprise me. But, I mean, Pluto is that power. Pluto is that, like, again, real concentrated power. And as Mercury's retrograding on top of Pluto, we just had Venus retrograde here. Now with Mercury, it's like we need to really rethink our idea of power. We really need to rethink our idea of fear and how we let that play into our plans and our systems and the way things work. And I think Mercury retrograding on Pluto is like, on a personal level, like, okay, I have, maybe I was scared to do something, but the more that you do it, the more that you implement it, the more that it becomes easier. Now we're getting to the point of like, hey, like, this isn't that scary. This isn't that crazy. Don't get me wrong. It's very new and change is uncomfortable, but that Mercury on top of Pluto is kind of, well, for some people, this is, you're either going to really start freaking out here, or if you let yourself, you're going to really start being like, you know what? Like, I fucking am feeling empowered by this shit. I am seeing where my power plays an influence here and where I can be in control. But we're just revisiting it. We're just completely rethinking this. This is, go back to December 31st when Mercury hit Venus and Pluto and entered shadow. We're coming right back to that, guys. So that brings us to Saturday. Woo, this is a big horoscope. Hold on, I'm pushing the wrong buttons here. Then we get to Saturday, and I forgot Venus Stations Direct. Venus Stations Direct on Saturday. Like, I can't believe we're literally done with it, but like, that's a huge deal. As Venus Stations Direct too, the moon's going to ingress into Capricorn and conjoin Mars, which, I mean, like, with the moon going into Capricorn, with Mars, Venus Stationing Direct, Mercury on Pluto, Saturday's lit. Saturday is very, very high energy, very, very loud, in your face. At the same time, the moon is going to be, what did it say? Sextiling Jupiter and then conjoining Venus. So, I mean, like, look, by 7 a.m., the moon's going to be conjoining here, Pacific Standard Time. The moon's going to be conjoining Mars in Capricorn. I'm a broken record with the moon in Capricorn. Emotionally detach, get something done. Like, moon in Capricorn is in detriment, right? Our emotions aren't really all well that felt. And there are times where your emotions need to be felt and expressed, but there are times where your emotions and your emotional sensitivity and your emotional responses will get you in trouble. And this moon in Capricorn is like, check out from the emotions, get yourself busy with something. And also with this moon on top of Mars, like, this is fucking cutthroat, in my opinion. Like, this is some real raw shit. This is what I love about this Capricorn and Aquarius stuff. Cause like, yeah, sure, it's hardcore, but like, like, I don't know, like, there are certain times in life where you can have fun, and it's all fun and games. And there's other times where shit's really serious. And there's a respectable moment for that. And I think this is it. Venus Stations Direct first thing in the morning. We wake up to a direct Venus. Venus is done retrograding now. She is the morning star. It's time to start moving forward. It's time to say, this is what I want. This is how I want to get it. And this is the way I'm going to get it. It's going to be scary because Venus has to face Pluto again. And this is what I talk about in my podcast episode of like, now that Venus is stationing direct and she kind of faced her fears, or she changed her relationship to fear, Venus is going to move forward with Mars. Where if Venus is going to have to face Pluto again, where Venus is going to have to face the fear again, but this time with Mars, where you're committed to it, you're going, there is no backing out. And I think as Venus stations direct here, there is this acceptance of moving forward. We've gone through the change. We've gone through okay, I'm starting to see this different. I'm starting to feel this differently. To now we have reshaped the plan. We have reshaped the value of it's kind of like a business plan, right? Like, certain businesses might value one part of their business and then they realize that they don't make enough revenue from it. So they have to shift their value to maybe a different service or a different product. That's kind of like this Venus in Capricorn, right? Or this Venus retrograde, right? Venus stationing Capricorn, stationing direct, moving forward is like, we're shifting our focus somewhere else. We value this, and this is a plan that might work for us better. Mercury's still on Pluto at this time. So this is again, very loud, very, very big change. And I just think it's so like, this is how we feel. This is what we're going for. It's just time to move forward. And that moon on top of Mars in Capricorn is, I talked about this also in my delineation episode. Make sure you guys watch it, of Mars in Capricorn being about earning things, and how hunter-gatherers, our ancient ancestors, used to have to like hunt for all of their food. And I know a lot of like vegans watch my channel, and what's really interesting, it's so funny to me that a lot of vegans think that like animals, like murdering animals is like really bad. When you actually get into like regenerative agriculture and especially hunting too, most of the time these people care more about the animals than like vegans do, to be honest with you. And I know that's probably a controversial saying, but I'll stick up for that. Farmers and hunters care way more about the land and animals than any vegans do. Now, why I say that is when you are like hunting and you are experiencing death and you are experiencing, like hardcore things, that moon and Mars is like, there's something that you have to check out of, like, right? Like if you're going to get, like if you can't handle death and if you can't handle the intense stuff, like, man, you're in the wrong place. And I think this moon, Mars and Capricorn is like, let's say if it's in a survival situation, you absolutely have to, let's say there's a cute little bunny, but you haven't eaten in 3 days because you're lost in the wilderness and you have to kill it, right? It's not going to be like, you're not like, unless you're a fucking psychopath and you're excited about, killing the animal. But there's this sense of like, you got to do what you got to do. There is the sense of this is a part of the system. This is how things are done. And this is a part of life. I think the moon conjoining Mars, though, it's like, there has to be the sense of like, just emotionally check out and just, you don't have to, again, just operate and do the plan, do the thing that you need to do and don't really worry about it. The moon and Mars is like, invest your emotions into actions, into purposeful actions, right? Like a lot of the hunters that do this stuff, they don't take these animals for like granted. They don't like, like, yes, there's sporting animals too, like, which is a whole nother subject, but like most of the time they, eat every single part of the animal. They repurpose it in a lot of different ways and it has a use and it has a purpose. And yes, it's hard, but there's, like, that's how we've survived for millions of years, right? And I think this moon conjoining Mars in Capricorn is just so like, there's things that are uncomfortable and that are hard to do, but you must do. You must do this. And like, this is Venus stationing direct. Moon and Mars is kind of like swallowing, like taking a big gulp and just going for it, knowing you've got to do it. It's going to be hard, might be even a little uncomfortable, but then later on in the day, the moon's going to sextile Jupiter, where there is this kind of sense of hope. There is this sense of like, okay, like, I mean, after you kind of do something really hard, there is this sense of kind of being like, okay, this is okay. We survived. We're okay. We're going to make it through another day. But then the moon is going to conjoin Venus later on Saturday, which is really interesting to me because now that Venus is direct and after that moon conjoins Mars and sextiles Jupiter, I think the moon conjoining Venus in Capricorn is like getting connected and feeling like moon and Capricorn on Venus and Venus and Capricorn is so like business, but being like, yeah, like feeling good about that. Now that Venus is direct and Mars is there and the moon is there and Mercury's there, it's not like Venus is alone here anymore. I think there is this much more like, it's sexy. Like honestly, moon, Venus, Mars, and Capricorn is like business, formal sexiness, in my opinion. And there is the sense of like, when you take things seriously and you're applying things seriously and you fucking care for yourself and you value yourself and you're sticking to that plan, you're sticking to your word, you're remaining disciplined, there's a fucking sense of like, in my opinion, like superiority or a sense of feeling really good at the minimum of it and enjoying it, right? There's a certain point where you can really enjoy the work. And I think that's where we get into Saturday evening. That leads us to Sunday though. God, we're 43 minutes. I got to wrap this up. But this is a really big week. This is a really big week. We go into Sunday and the sun's going to square Uranus, which I think is a kind of a big deal. And the moon's going to conjoin Mercury and Pluto. So as we get into Sunday, pretty much the sun squaring Uranus is like, I mean, Uranus is rebellion. Uranus is going to be, ups and downs, shifting the tables, destabilization, liberation, freedom, revolution. And I think that sun square Uranus, well, I mean, you're going to probably see protests and riots, here soon, like as we have been seeing for a while. But I'm a little curious about the sun being about like our sense of individuality and Aquarius being really connected to bigger groups of people during the Saturn Uranus square. I just wonder if there's going to be much more of a specific pop-up or a riot on this day. But I think the sun in Aquarius, sun's in detriment, right? Squaring Uranus in Taurus, like, things still might be unstable and things aren't always necessarily put together. And I just think the sun squaring Uranus is just going to be kind of frustrating. We want everything to go to this plan. We want everything to be stable, but Saturn squaring Uranus, it's just not. And I think at the same time, the moon is going to be conjoining Mercury retrograde and Pluto, where there is this sense of like, okay, we're taking action on this now. Now I see the difference in, my attitude. I see the difference in how I'm doing things. And then that moon conjoining Mercury and Pluto is kind of like, the first time might not be easy. And even the second or third time might not be easy. I think this is moon, conjoining Mercury, conjoining Pluto is like realizing, like, yes, the plan, like, I don't even want to say that the plans have changed, but maybe realizing, for example, when you make a document that you read and it sounds really good, and then you edit it and you're kind of like, this edit doesn't make sense, but then you reread it again, you're like, oh, this is the right edit. This is the right way to do things. That's moon, Mercury, Pluto here. Now, for some people, you're going to be, over edit it and make it worse because, Pluto's going to fuck with you and give you anxiety. Or you could say, you could get on a sick one and be like, yes, this re-edit is exactly what I want. And you can just kind of like, really feel empowered by it. And that's how we go into Sunday night. Next week, I don't think I'm going to have a final thoughts for this because I think I think my final thoughts are on my delineation episode. But next week, new moon in Aquarius. Mercury stations direct, Saturn Cazimi, a lot of things. We start next week as the beginning of February, and I've been saying this for a long time now. A lot of January is like changing and dealing with stuff that we've dealt with since November and December. February is that rock bottom. February is where, we're at the bottom and we start working our way up. So a lot of this week is those changes that occur with that. And then, next week is really where we know where we're at and we're at a foundational bottom and we can start again progressing from there, which also won't be easy. You know what? My final thoughts are this week are watch my delineation episode. Because just straight up, I think it's game time. It's time to do the work. This is going to be some hardcore shit for a while, but this is, exciting. Honestly, it's Mars conjoining Venus. Have some fucking fun. Like, Venus isn't going to be retrograde anymore. And yes, it's all in Capricorn, but like, have some fucking fun with this. Be creative with it. Like, get into it, right? Sure, there's going to be problems. Sure, there's going to be challenges, but like, you got to make it fun. You got to make it rewarding. And I think the work and earning what you want is the reward, right? And I think there's just a bigger focus on earning it and doing what it takes to get it, right? So anyway, this is a really long episode. Thank you guys so much for being here, liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing. I love and appreciate every single one of you, and I'll be seeing you next week.